Okay, today we did the Chapter 9 test review on 4/8/2015. Your test is tomorrow, which is 4/9/2015. Number 1 says determine the range of the function graph below. And when we talk about range, we're talking about the y. So you're only looking at the y-axis. How high up did it go on the y-axis? And it looks like the highest point is at the 1. So you'd write that as y is less than or equal to 1. And y can be 1 or anything less. So that's your answer right there for number 1. Number 2 says, how does the graph of f of x equals x squared plus 6 differ from the graph of g of x equals x squared minus 3? And the best way to do this one is to graph them both. So go to your calculator, type in x squared plus 6, and you can't really see it, but that's okay. Now type in the second equation. And we know the widths are the same because the number in front of x squared is the same. But we need to see how much the second one is shifted down. And it looks like they're 9 units apart. So f of x is 9 units apart above g of x, which was the second equation. So we're going to go back and we'll type that in. F of x is 9 units above g of x. Number 3, the function below can be used to describe the path of a hummingbird flying through the air. F of x equals x squared minus x minus 12. So what we need to do, we need to find factors of negative 12 that if we add them up, they're going to equal negative 1. So we're going to do that little t-chart thing. And there's our t-chart. And we got to figure out what times what equals negative 12. So I know 3 times 4 is 12. And since we have a negative 1 here, that tells me the bigger number has to be negative. So negative 4 plus 3 equals negative 1. So that means these are our factors. And here's how you're going to write it. X plus 3 times x minus 4. And that is your answer. Those are your factors. Okay, and if you want to check it, you can go back and FOIL it, and you should get that trinomial you started with. Number 4, what are the x-intercepts of the graph of the quadratic function? 5x squared plus 21x plus 4. Best thing to do is go to your graph and graph it. We're going to type it in our calculator. And you can see where this one falls. You can see clearly, but the other one is in between numbers. So there's a few different ways that you can figure it out. I'm going to show you a new way. You're going to go to Menu, Analyze Graph, and we're looking for zeros. So it's going to give you this little range thing. Just click it, and then scroll over that. And it's going to give you the point. It says negative 0.2. And we got to figure out if the answer choices are in fraction, we got to figure out what the fraction is. So go back to calculate, negative 0.2. Now do menu, number, approximate to fraction, hit enter, and it's negative 1/5. That was where the other one fell on the graph, negative 1/5. So here's how we would write it. The first one was 4 and 0. That's the first 0 point. And then the second one was negative 1/5 and 0. And those are your 2 points where it crosses the x-axis. Number 5, what statement best describes the graphs of y equals negative 5x squared and y equals 5x squared? If you're not sure just by looking at it, go to your graph and graph it. So there's negative 5x squared. It bows down or opens downward. And here's 5x squared. It opens upward. They're the same width. The negative just makes the other one open downward, and the positive makes it open upward. So that's how I wrote that for number 5. Number 6. A toy rocket is launched from a platform 15 feet above the ground at a speed of 75 feet per second. The height of the rocket in feet is given by the equation. We're going to change that 26 right there to 15. And T is in seconds. How high will the rocket be in 3 seconds? So we're going to substitute the 3 everywhere where we see a T. Okay, and I went ahead and plugged it in. 3 squared is 9, so I went ahead and put 9 where the T squared is. And now we're going to simplify a little bit. Negative 16 times 9 is negative 144. 75 times 3 is 225. And then we still have the 15 we just brought down. So after you work all that out, you should get 96. So in 3 seconds, the rocket was at 96 feet. Number 7. Given f of x equals x squared plus 4 with a domain of negative 2, negative 1, 0, 1, and 3, what is the range? I recommend going to your calculator and graphing it. And then pulling up your t-chart. So let's go to our calculator. Now pull up your t-chart. Okay, we're going to scroll up so that we can get our negative numbers. And we're going to write it on our paper like this. We've got our XY chart with our domain and then all of our ranges that we pulled up from our graph. And if I'm going too fast, just pause the video. For number 8 and 9, you're going to use this graph. Across the x-axis, you have your selling price, and up on the y-axis, you have your profit. So number 8 says, using the graph at what selling price S will the business maximize their profit? So when you hear maximize, you're looking for the highest point on the graph, and that's your vertex right there. So that tells me when the selling price was $32.50, they made the highest profit, which was $20,000. So the selling price was $32.50 in order to maximize the profit, and you would bubble that in on your little chart on your test. Number 9, using a graph, at which of the following selling prices will the profit be 0? So they're already labeled for you on your chart. At $20 and at $45, the profit is 0. Number 10, factor the trinomial 3x squared plus 10x plus 8. We got to find factors of 3 and factors of 8 that if we multiply outside times outside and inside times inside, they would add to 10. So 1 times 3. And factors of 8, let's use 2 times 4. And if I do outside times outside, that'd be 1 times 4, which is 4. And if I do inside times inside, that's 3 times 2, which is 6. And if I do 4 plus 6, that equals 10. So that tells me these are the correct factors and they are in the correct order. The first set are my first number of each parentheses. So it'd be 1x and 3x. Second set are my second number in each parentheses, and they have to stay in that order to make it work out. Now you look at the equation to see what signs you use. So we had a plus plus, our answer is also going to be plus plus. And that's your answer. Those are factors. A golfer hits the golf ball. The quadratic function negative 10x squared plus 60x gives the height in x seconds. How long does it take to return to the ground? So we want to know when it's 0, and I recommend graphing it. So go ahead and type it in. Okay, right here's where we started. Now here's where we're back at 0, and you can count it, or you can pull up your t-chart, or you can hit Menu, Analyze Graph, 0, and do your little range over the 0 part, and it'll tell you the point. So there's our 0 right there. At 6 seconds, the ball got back to the ground. Number 12, write a polynomial to represent the area of the shaded region. Then solve for x, given that the area of the shaded region is 52 square units. We're not going to worry about that second part right now. We're just going to worry about getting the area of the shaded region. In order to just get the green area, we're going to have to minus out that white area. So the first thing we need to do is figure out the area length times width of the white area. So it'd be 3 times 2x, which would be 6x. At some point, we're going to have to subtract that. And we're going to take these two binomials and we're going to FOIL them. So we're going to do first times first. 3x times 2x is 6x squared. Outside times outside. 3x times 4 is 12x. Inside times inside. 2 times 2x is 4x. And last times last, 2 times 4 is 8. Okay, that would get us the entire area, including the white box. So we got to minus out the white box, which is 6x. Now let's combine our like terms. We've got 3x's here. We got 12x, 4x, and a minus 6x. So the 6x squared doesn't combine with anything. 12x plus 4x is 16x, minus 6x is 10x. And those are all taken care of. Now we just have the plus 8. And if you get to that, you are good. You'll be able to find your answer. Number 13, write a polynomial that represents the volume of the prism using x. So anytime you do volume, you're doing length times width times height. So you're multiplying 3 things. Now on this one, we're going to multiply all 3 things, but we got to take care of those binomials first. So we're going to FOIL those first. We're going to keep that x and we're going to leave it alone. We're going to leave it for last. So let's go ahead and FOIL these. X times 3x is 3x squared. And my formatting's kind of off, so it looks a little funny, but that's 3x squared. And x times 2 is 2x. Inside times inside, 5 times 3 is 15x. Last times last is 5 times 2 is 10. So now we can combine our like terms before we multiply that x out. 2x and 15x is 17x plus 10. All right, now let's multiply this x. When we multiply by the 3x squared, we're going to add the x, and now it's going to be 3x to the, we're going to multiply by everything. So now it's going to be 3x to the third plus 17x squared plus 10x. And I know it looks a little funny. Just know that those are exponents. And that is your answer. And that's as simple as it gets on that one. Number 14, multiply 4x plus 1 times x squared minus 2x minus 6. So you got to multiply the 4x by everything. And then you got to multiply the 1 by everything. Okay, 4x times x squared is going to be 4x to the third. 4x times negative 2x is going to be minus 8x squared. 4x times negative 6 minus 24x. Now let's do the 1. 1 times x squared is positive x squared. 1 times negative 2x is negative 2x. And 1 times negative 6 is negative 6. So now we got to combine all of our like terms, but it's kind of hard to tell. So let's circle what can go together. There's our 8x squared and our regular x squared. And then we have our negative 24x and our negative 2x. So our 4x to the third doesn't combine with anything. And our negative 8x squared and 1x squared ends up being negative 7x squared. Those are done. Now we got negative 24x and negative 2x. That's 26x. Those are done now. And we're left with minus 6. And that is your simplified version of that problem. Number 15. 2 points on the graph of a quadratic function are shown on the grid below. The directions say plot these 2 points, negative 3 and 0, and 1 and 0. So let's plot those. The question says, what is the equation for the axis of symmetry of the graph of this function after you've plotted the points given? So axis of symmetry divides it exactly in half. So the one that we divide it exactly in half is negative 1. And it wants an equation, so you would write that as x equals negative 1 because it crosses the x-axis. It does not cross the y-axis. And that is it. Your review is done. Good luck, guys.